うん、そうは言ったんだけど、新しい面白さの価値を発見したいみたいなことは言ったんだけど、1話とか2話はそれでも随分親切には作ってると思うんだよね。まだ最大公約数的に誰が見ても分かるようには作ってやるつもりなんだよね。いや、すでに1話2話でもう訳が分からんって随分言われたんだけど、それでも僕にしてみるともう最大限にサービスしたつもりだったんだよね。単純に面白いって言われるような作品だけを作りたいわけじゃないんだよね。もちろん面白いっていうのはそれなりに世間のリアクションがあったということだから、そういう評価はありがたいんだけど、なんていうのかな、それよりはやっぱり修行僧みたいな価値だって言われるのかもしれないんだけど、面白さの価値そのものも突き詰めたいと思ってるんだよね。
2019's spring anime season has come to an end, and with it the 11-episode run of Sarazanmai, the latest show by acclaimed director Kunihiko Ikuhara. If you know much about me, then you know Ikuhara's work is in that rare category of things I'm as passionate about as Homestuck, and Sarazanmai's close left me wanting to finally talk about why. So, let's do that. Sarazanmai is a show about the connections formed between people, and the beautiful and terrible power they have over the world in totality and each one of us individually. It's about the things people do to and for each other in the name of love, of loyalty, of the simple words, I want to stay by your side, I want to be there for you. But it's also about the connections between its own story and the rest of Ikuhara's original productions. 1996's revolutionary Girl Utena, 2011's Mawaru Penguindrum, and 2015's Yuri Kuma Arashi, or Lesbian Bear Storm, which I felt warranted translating. Oh, and spoiler warnings for all of these shows past this point. And I don't want to go full hog on auteur theory here. Ikuhara isn't a god. We'll soon see these shows are far from perfect, and Ikuhara has a reputation for working with strong creative teams and taking risks to uplift promising young voices in the industry anyway. But it's clear his artistic priorities have an influence on shows directed by him, which results in some recurring traits between them. Ideas like the nature of love and faith, the failures and cruelties of societal systems, and a kind of surreal, dreamlike, Lynchian quality to the cinematography. But most importantly, Ikuhara-directed shows seem to exist in what I'm going to call a synchronistic multiverse. They're all self-contained, fairly concise works by anime standards, but they also reference, borrow, and even comment on each other through their shared focus on mimetic phrasing and symbolism. Utena, Ikuhara's earliest show, borrows heavily from Jungian ideas, like the shadow, cultural archetypes like the fairy tale prince and princess, the collective unconscious, and most importantly for our purposes, synchronicity, or the idea of meaningful coincidence connecting otherwise totally disconnected events. You might recognize a number of other stories that employ this kind of meaningful recurrence. Homestuck refers to the idea as circumstantial simultaneity, and versions of it show up in Dark Souls and Stephen King's Dark Tower series too. In Utena, this is commented on through the idea of revolution, used to mean both a great change to social or systemic orders, and a full rotation. The idea is that things are continually repeating and leading back to each other over and over again. These ideas are then conveyed through visual symbols, like the egg, the spinning wheels of a car, carousels, and of course various rotating roses and girls. We can focus on how each show uses the idea of the circle to start getting an idea of where each show is headed tonally and thematically. Cycles and revolutions feature prominently in Mawaru, or spinning, Penguindrum, but it's also heavily concerned with the cycle of fate, a divine force that defines the shape of the entire show. Penguindrum ultimately depicts fate as a circular stairway made of breaking glass that cuts at the traveler, conveying its character's experience of life as a series of punishments endured for the sake of being with the people they love. Sarazanmai's finale also uses a path to represent its own defining deity, in this case the pink A sign that resembles a subway stop, a point of connection in and of itself. The A symbol acts as a ruling force of the show, symbolizing the connections people form throughout the modern world. The prime representative of this symbol is Sarazanmai, an idol connected to everyone in the city through the media who is eventually revealed to be literally divine, a princess goddess meant to lead humanity towards embracing and believing in their human connections with each other. Yuri Kuma, meanwhile, focuses on true love, particularly in the context of ideas like eternity, previously touched on in Utena. At the end of Yuri Kuma, its protagonists escape the cycles of violence and suffering built into their world by embracing their love for each other, and journeying into the grace of their setting's god, Lady Kumaria, her form cast in the light of a wheel of stars. Sarazanmai is the most explicit about this focus on circles and cycles as a symbol for connections. The friendship between our protagonist trio, Kazuki, Enta, and Toi, are symbolized by a misanga wrapped around Kazuki's ankle, a binding loop. The striped shirts that Kazuki's family wears likewise encase their bodies in circular loops, and Kazuki stops wearing them when he starts feeling like he doesn't belong with his family. His sibling Haruka's show-centering speech affirming Kazuki's connection to his family is framed by a circle in the background. Haruka is the voice of the show's moral framework, representing faith in the importance of these connections. So, keeping that in mind, let me give you an example of the show-crossing connections I want to explore in this series before we get any more lost in the weeds. So, this is Otone Jinai, older sister to Enta Jinai, one of our 3 pro-tags. All in all, her role in the show is fairly minor. She's the club head or maybe teacher of Enta's soccer club and basically represents normal, happy society. She butts heads with Enta a couple of times, but is mostly a source of encouragement and support to him. Eventually, she even proves a great wingman when she passes on Enta's feelings of love to Kazuki after the former gets shot, in the process showing what a caring and attentive older sister she is. And that's about all there is to her story. Unless you've also watched Yuri Kuma Arashi. If you have, you might have recognized how similar she looks to one of that show's 3 protagonists, Yurigasaki Lulu. Lulu has a baby brother too. But while Enta is withdrawn and rather thoughtless about his sister in Sarazanmai, in Yuri Kuma it's the older sister who doesn't take proper care of her sibling. Instead, she's jealous of and annoyed by him, to the point that she conspires to cause his death and eventually succeeds, much to her own regret. Her story is a tragedy of love lost due to petty sibling jealousy. Consumed by regret for wasting her brother's love, she tries to make things right by ensuring another's love won't be wasted, leading her to help Ginko Yurishiro accomplish her goal of reuniting with her lost friend Kureha. In order to do so, Lulu has to make a choice between her faith in love and her ability to receive kisses. Lulu chooses to give up on kisses, and then jokingly requests them of Ginko for the rest of the show. All the while, she hides the true extent of her feelings for her. This is interesting because it's basically Enta's main conflict in Sarazanmai, and also because Otone's closest thing to a character episode shows us a girl who has very much not given up on kisses. She isn't going through life with the self-sacrificial mindset Lulu once did. If we're meant to see Otone as a continuation of Lulu's story, then there's a kind of growth being conveyed here. But wait, I'm not seriously suggesting we do that, am I? A similar character design is one thing, and so are a couple of parallels, but I'm basically suggesting we treat Sarazanmai as a bizarre kind of sequel to Yuri Kuma Arashi here. There's nothing to imply there's any real relationship between the 2 girls. After all, they don't even exist in the same world, right? Well, to answer that, we have to look at the opening and closing lines of Mawaru Penguindrum, which see 2 boys discussing Kenji Miyazawa's Night on the Galactic Railroad. Boy number 1 tells us outright what Penguindrum thinks about the story, particularly its symbolic use of the apple, which he argues is a universe in the palm of your hand, and a reward for those chosen to die for love. When boy number 2 protests that when you die, everything's over, his friend denies this, speaking for Miyazawa's vision when he says that's when everything begins. In other words, the apple is the world and life itself. God imparts it as a gift to those willing to die for love, thus allowing them to live again. This is exactly what happens at the end of Penguindrum. Kamba and Shoma both die to protect and save the people they love, and set off on a new adventure with a new life together. The case being made here is a spiritual one, rooted deeply in the Christian themes of both Night on the Galactic Railroad and Penguindrum. Every single one of Ikuhara's shows tends to have some connection to this Christian framework, in fact. There's the swords shaped like crosses that crucify Anthe and Utena, Yuri Kuma Arashi's use of angelic imagery and Ave Maria, and the A symbol being visually identified as synonymous with the Holy Spirit in Sarazanmai. And as it happens, Lulu does leave Yuri Kuma by dying for love, using her dying breaths to give Ginko hope that her love can come true. For that matter, so does her little brother Milne, since he died trying to get his sister the promised kiss she asked him for. After Lulu dies, we see her reunited with Milne in a field we don't recognize, showing us they've been reunited in death after all. They've been granted another life together through means we don't fully understand. It'd be fair to argue against this point by saying that Yuri Kuma itself doesn't set up the idea of an apple or an afterlife reward for dying for love the way Penguindrum does, and so it's a bit disingenuous to frame its ending in this context. But we see a similar carryover of ideas in Sarazanmai, where elements from Ikuhara's previous shows are introduced without much commentary or explicit acknowledgement, despite being used in pretty much the same ways. Yuri Kuma Arashi, for example, presents the idea of true love rising to the sky to become a star. Jump to episode 11 of Sarazanmai, where as a last-ditch gambit to stop the Golden Trio, Otter coats the Bridge of Desires in darkness, making it impossible for them to see the way forward. But they are then shown the way through by a single spark of light. The connection between Reo and Mabu, the desire to help someone, the desire to see them, the desire to be by their side, no matter what. After being coerced into doing terrible things to themselves, each other, and the world for the sake of their love for the entire show, Reo and Mabu are rescued from Otter and resurrected, becoming a star that lights the boys' path. To someone who hasn't seen Yuri Kuma, this might seem completely random and arbitrary, but it isn't. Sarazanmai is just leaning on Ikuhara's previous works to symbolically uplift and validate Reo and Mabu's relationship, marking their love as the real thing. Given the consistency here, I don't think it's too far-fetched to conclude that the central spiritual ideas showcased in these works tend to carry into the others, whether or not they're directly expressed, because what these shows seem to be trying to communicate is a spiritual worldview. Yuri Kuma even centers the conflict between bears, who among other things believe in the goddess Kumaria, and the human schoolgirls of the Invisible Storm, who are explicitly atheistic and believe only in the rules of their own social hierarchy. The fact that different people believe different things about the existence of any higher meaning to the world, whether that be God, fate, love, or connections, is itself a recurring theme in Ikuhara's shows. So if this reading of his work just doesn't appeal to you or seems way too far-fetched, that's perfectly fine. But I personally find exploring these readings really enriching and interesting. So let's keep exploring Sarazanmai under the premise that this higher meaning really does exist. Not now, obviously. This is going to be a fairly long-running series. I have no idea how long it's going to take before I feel like I've discussed all of the parallels in Ikuhara's shows that I feel are worth bringing up or that I haven't heard before, and this particular video is already way longer than my usual, so that's going to do it for now. But I hope you found this interesting enough to stay tuned for the next videos, when we'll talk about Kepi and Azumasara, the Otters and Dark Kepi, and of course our 3 protagonists. Until then, please let me know what you thought of this video. I've been thinking about this stuff for a really long time, and I find it really tricky to talk about, so if you have any feedback, I can promise I'll appreciate it.
Huge thanks go out to my patrons for making this video possible. If you want to help support the channel and come join us at our awesome and growing Discord community, feel free to join us for as little as $1 a month. That's all for now, so thank you again, and as always, keep rising.